Alrighty, here we go. Preparations for war. Your sheet should look something like this. Today, the notes that I'm going to go over with you are basically going to give you a tale of the tape, as I like to say, which means that we are going to get a snapshot prior to the American Revolution of who is supposed to win. And now, obviously, I would hope that after last unit, all of you well, not after last unit, but I would just hope that all of you know that the United States, the 13 colonies, I would hope that you know that we win the American Revolution. And so what I want you to pretend today is that you are living in like 1775, 1776, and you are trying to figure out which one of these sides, either Great Britain or the 13 colonies in the United States, are going to win this American Revolution. So I want you thinking about that. Now most of you, or I guess all of you, know that I absolutely love sports, and I love bringing sports into things that I do, including my teaching. And therefore, I have put in a little category in this box over here, advantage, Great Britain or the United States. And we are going to be counting up the advantages. Not necessarily what side wins, because we know that the Americans will win, but basically as you look at the background information on both of these sides, which one should win. So we'll go ahead and get started. You can see we have our categories here on the left: population, manufacturing, money, army, leaders, geography, navy, and the overall advantage. And then we have Great Britain, 13 colonies / United States, and advantage Great Britain or United States. For population, and again, please put all this stuff down in your notes because you will be using this for things that we will do throughout this unit on the American Revolution. The population of Great Britain was about 12 million people at the time of the American Revolution, whereas your population of the 13 colonies in the United States is approximate. And if you're looking for the approximate button, you're going to hold down the shift key and then the upper left just underneath the escape key. That'll get you that little approximate sign. The population of the 13 colonies was about 2.8 million, and what I want you to keep in mind is many of these people were loyal to Great Britain, and we call these people either Tories or loyalists. You'll hear me use both of those words throughout this unit. A Tory or a loyalist simply means that a person living in the colonies was loyal to Great Britain. Really hard to believe, I know, that a loyalist would be loyal to Great Britain, but obviously it's true. Take a look, advantage Great Britain or the United States. Hopefully you did well in math class. 2.8 or 12, which one is higher? Great Britain is without question going to have the advantage in population. Not only that, if you want to add this in there, they have 3 times as many people. And again, really keep in mind, and you may want even to highlight this, even of the United States, the 13 colonies, 2.8 million, many of these people were still loyal to Great Britain. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Manufacturing, that is factories, that is being able to create goods. Great Britain was highly developed and flourishing, which means they were doing an incredibly good job, and yet they, things were just getting better in terms of their manufacturing. United States, their factories, what they had at their disposal is practically nothing. There was very little organization in United States factories. They couldn't produce goods at a quick level, and in fact, many of their goods they depended on from, guess where? You got it, Great Britain or maybe other parts of Europe, but they really didn't have any of their own. Clearly, this advantage is going to go to Great Britain. Think about it if you're the 13 colonies, if you're the United States. You are relying on the people who you are facing, the people who you are at war with, to give you things. So obviously, Great Britain's not going to keep manufacturing and supplying your army with guns. I mean, that just makes no sense. So clearly, first 2 advantages here are for Great Britain. Money! Money, money, money! If I don't have your attention by now, well, you're probably asleep. Money. Great Britain is was the, excuse me, at this point in time, richest nation in the world. You are talking, they are the most loaded, the best nation in the world in terms of financial situation. Take a look at the United States. No money to support the war effort. Money was basically earned by the Continental Army and by the Continental Congress, was based on donations, which means there was no way to collect taxes. And we'll get back to this as we go further in history class as to why this not being able to collect taxes is such a huge difficulty. Besides, think about it, you guys know this, they were protesting taxes of Great Britain. They didn't like all these different acts, the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, the Townshend Acts. I mean, they hated all these different things. And so, really, the United States had no money to support the war. The other problem was donations. Think about it this way. If I ask every single one of you in my class for $10, I might have a couple of you give me the $10, but most of you would be like, no thanks, Mr. Bazem, I'm not going to give that to you. You can get it from somebody else. And that's the exact same thing that happens here. The colonists, basically need help, but no one really wanted to donate. Clearly, hopefully you figured out that the advantage with money is with Great Britain. Most of you are probably starting to say, Mr. Bazem, how in the heck did we ever win this war when you can see, look at all these advantages already from Great Britain? And I think that's, one of those things that I really want you to understand is the United States is the underdog. Without question, we are the underdog in this war. In terms of armies, the British Army had a large, well-trained army plus what we're going to call mercenaries. A mercenary, put it right in here, is a hired soldier, or in this case, since I wrote mercenaries, hired soldiers. What they will do is they will hire what's called Hessians, which are German mercenaries, which means these guys were literally hired to be soldiers and to be killers. They basically were hired hitmen, army hitmen, whose job it was to kill the United States, to kill the colonial army. So not only was the United States fighting against the strongest army in the world, they're also fighting against Hessians. So they're fighting against a British army and a German hired army. The army for the Americans, most of you are probably familiar with this, was all volunteer forces. You've probably heard the term before, but these Minutemen, these guys who were ready to fight at a moment's notice. So all these volunteer forces, the good part is they were very willing to fight, but as you could probably tell from above, because of the money and financial situation, they were very poorly equipped. They lacked experience, and it was basically a bunch of untrained farm boys. Think Montcalm County guys grabbing their deer rifles and heading out to war. It's not exactly against the most powerful army in the world. I'm pretty sure Montcalm County would lose. But again, the remarkable thing in this American Revolution is look at all these different advantages for Great Britain, and so I can finish this. Oh, lucky day for us. Leaders. We're still on the British chart here. The British had few officers who were capable of leading. In particular, a guy by the name of General William Howe. General William Howe will basically take his sweet time, and it will end up costing him big. For those of you who really want to know the story on this, William Howe was basically, I don't know how to put this in the nicest way, but he was basically having an affair with this woman. And he decided not to really move his army much because he really didn't want to be away from his lady friend. And that kind of ended up costing the British Army because he just refused to leave, and he wasn't as aggressive as he probably should have been. So I want you to kind of keep that in the back of your heads with the leadership aspect. Now here's the good part for the colonies, the Americans. The Americans, with their army and their with their leaders, had many dedicated and able officers, including a man who I am sure you have heard of, George Washington, plus the eventual help of foreign leaders, most notably the French. We'll talk about how Benjamin Franklin will help get the French on our side. Now, as you take a look at these two columns, for the very first time, good old USA is finally going to have the advantage. Washington was a huge advantage in and of himself because he was just such a brilliant military mind. And his men really looked up to him and thought a lot of him, which you will see in the movie The Crossing, which we will watch very soon. Geography in terms of the British. You have to keep in mind this war was fought on U.S. soil. Therefore, it was a very strange land, for them anyway, with long distance to their base of supplies. Remember, they're going to get all their supplies from Great Britain, and because of that, they're going to have to go a long ways if they need more. Also, few local citizens that were willing to help. You know, yes, I guess your loyalists and your Tories may be willing to help the British Army, but if you're a colonist who believes in independence, if you're a guy who supports these Minutemen, if you're a person who hates all these taxes, you're not going to help the British Army. If they get lost, you're not going to tell them where to go. At least I would hope that you wouldn't, because you'd just be helping their cause and hurting your own. Geography in terms of the United States. They had familiar land with easy access to limited amounts of supplies. So even though they didn't have a lot of supplies, it was easy access because they could get to it very, very quickly. Many local citizens were also willing to help your United States Army. These would be your patriots, people who believed in the American cause, and so you did have quite a few people in that regard who would help the United States. So therefore, your advantage geographically is clearly with the United States. You could say they kind of had a home field advantage. For you kids who play sports, I would assume that most of you would rather play a home game as opposed to an away game. And for all intents and purposes, in this matchup of Britain versus the United States had the home turf and the home field advantage. Navy for the British. Strongest navy in the world. I mean, you are talking in the entire whole wide world in the 1770s, the British had the greatest army you could assemble. Navy you could assemble. The United States Navy, on the other hand, was very small at the beginning of the war. They did eventually grow larger throughout the war, but ships were mostly operated by merchants, and that's just another word for traders, instead of trained naval officers. So basically you have people who are commanding these ships that have no real military training. And that's not necessarily going to be the best thing when you have a group of people who are basically traders by nature, and now all of a sudden you have to have them command your Navy. So kind of a disadvantage for the United States there. And so for the advantage here, we're definitely going to go with Great Britain. Now take a look at these, and we will tally them up. Overall, your advantages for Great Britain, they have advantages in 5 of these categories. The United States with advantages in only 2 categories. The only 2 the United States had was the leadership and geography categories. Therefore, the overall advantage is definitely going to be with Great Britain. I want you again to take a look. At the beginning of the Revolution, both Great Britain and the United States had some distinct advantages. After taking notes, I want you to pretend you're alive in 1776. Who stands the best chance to win? I would hope at the end of these notes that you realize that Great Britain had the greatest chance of winning. Why? Take a look at all the different advantages that they have. And you know, kind of brainstorm to yourself. And if I were you, what I would do before I conclude these notes, I would maybe put bold print next to whatever category it is that you feel is maybe the most important or that gives Great Britain the greatest advantage. You know, you might want to put some of these things where, okay, you know, population was an advantage for the British, so you want to go and put that in red because, you know, the British had their red coats. You know, the leaders was actually an advantage for the United States. We talk about the red, white, and blue, so maybe you want to put blue in there for the United States. So anything that you want to do to make these notes more meaningful to you, I would highly encourage you to do. And if you have any questions about these notes, please let me know. Thank you very much.